Hey guys, welcome to Art of War Plus One. Today we've got something a little bit different. So we know that Blitz has been played quite a lot overseas and even in New Zealand with the skirmishes.
Yep.
And now we're moving into Classic Constructed with Rotinets and the cooling.
So we're taking one of the more popular Blitz heroes in Kano, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
look at what you do when moving to Classic Constructed from any Blitz deck to a Classic Constructed version of it.
Yeah.
And we'll just use Kano as the background because Kano's one of my favourite heroes. I love the playstyle.
You're a bit of a wizard champion, aren't you?
I've had a reasonable amount of success on him now. No like really big events, but placing when it was 12th at Cooling Auckland at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And then a couple skirmishes.
Yeah. So before we start pulling out any cards and looking at things, what kind of niche are we looking to fill? What is our deck trying to be?
Yeah. So why would you pick Kano in Classic Constructed?
Exactly, right?
Yeah. So, and I think you should do this for any deck. You should look at why you're building it,
Yeah.
what the strengths are, and what you should be playing towards. Like, a lot of decks have different ways you can build it,
Yeah.
and you should be looking at why you'd pick one over the other.
Yeah. I think the number one reason for playing Kano and Constructed is because you want to do something different.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason. Everyone else is out there with their fancy weapons and attack and 40 life
Yeah.
or animals.
They're half a dozen chain decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, you think 10 extra life is too many, so we're going to sling some spells.
Yep.
One of the other reasons is Kano got a bit of a buff with Monarch because there are a lot of new heroes that demand extra sideboard slots. Prism demands it. A lot of decks want to chuck an extra 6+ attack actions. That
Or
might not
time
have
step
played.
potions.
Or time snaps. And chain demands snags. For
Snags
a
or
lot of
chains of
decks.
eminence.
Yeah. So that means a lot of decks are going to be skimping on Null Rune, which is, if you're playing Kano and you run into people playing for Null Rune all the time, then maybe you should consider switching decks.
I think Guardian would never move off that.
Yeah.
They'll sit on at least 3 the whole time,
Yep.
which will make that forever like a different matchup
One
to
of
the
your
rest of
harder
them.
matchups, right?
Yep. But you'll find a lot of decks such as Warrior, Chain. Everyone's going to be sitting on these one Null Rune
Yeah.
just because they're only thinking about the Chain
And
matchup.
destroy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And Kano can really punish you for running that low Null Rune count.
Exactly right.
The deck's damage ceiling is probably the highest in the game.
Yeah. Blazing gets you there. Right?
Blazing at it, right?
And when your opponent isn't running Null Rune, the effectiveness of your cards just drastically goes up.
Yeah.
So your Sonic Booms, your Lesson in Lava is just
Yeah.
always alive.
Aether Flare.
Aether Flare is an amazing card when your opponent is running Null Rune.
Yeah.
And some of these cards are kind of bad when your opponent's just going to
Yeah.
block them out. And unlike Blitz, your opponent has 40 life, so it's quite hard to just burn them from 100 to 0 in 3 turns.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get punished if they're playing 4 Null Rune.
Yep.
But if your meta is skimping, they're only playing 1 Null Rune, then this deck can sneak right in there and get some wins.
And there are ways to play Kano around high Null Rune, but today we're going to be looking at the build which is looking at these meta decks and trying to beat them on damage racing and taking people's lack of willingness, taking advantage of their lack of willingness to sideboard for Kano.
Yeah. So our main goals are to be fast, have high damage output very quickly, and have some side build plans for some of the more popular decks.
Yep.
Cool. Should we get into it?
Yeah, so we're going to start with equipment, which is the easy one. So I'm just going to put out all my Blitz equipment.
Yep.
So I think this was everything I was playing in Blitz.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the top row is all slam dunks. You should always be playing these in Kano, with maybe not this. You can debate that, but I think the power of the card is still up there enough that you want to be playing it anyway.
So if you're playing Kano and you're on a budget, then definitely skip on the skull cap.
Yep.
It's the least important piece of equipment here.
This is
other
the
than
single most
Kano
important card
slots.
in the deck, though.
Yeah.
I would never play Kano without them.
If you don't have Storm Striders, I would probably suggest you shouldn't play Kano.
Yep. You can get away with Mage Masters, especially in a lower power, local environment.
If some of your locals don't have legendaries or the missing pieces, you can get away with it.
Yep.
But Storm Striders are so key for the deck. They
And it changes
enable so many of your plays.
It changes the playstyle of the deck quite a lot.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're playing Kano properly if you're not running Storm Striders.
Exactly.
Just it gives you the option to look for more instant speed plays, and changes the game from killing your opponent when they're on 0 to changing them to killing them when they're on 10.
Yeah.
Because the damage output that it gives you on the end of turn is
some of the legendaries are like, oh, it lets me block an extra 2. That's cool. But with Storm Striders, it is so much damage that you do actually regularly go, well, if I didn't have Storm Striders here, I lose the game 100%.
Yeah.
And that would be quite a number of your games.
Yeah.
Tunic and Metacarpus.
Tunic's best in slot.
Yeah.
The one block comes up a lot more than you'd expect, and making resource over the course of the game, even if we're only planning on getting 2 resource off it in this deck, I think that it lets you hit enough breakpoints that you want to be running it as your best in slot, with your other options being Robe of Rapture, which I don't have here.
Yep.
It's not as good. It uses your action point up, and it doesn't block.
And I think Blood Drop Brocade is actually a decent option if you don't have any Arcane Rising.
Yeah, that's another good option you could look at.
Yeah.
And the Metacarpus nodes is the best gloves you can get. It regularly pushes like 3 to 5 damage on a really big turn.
So the idea is to double the +1, right?
Yeah. So you use it on 2 cards, or you use it on like an Aether Flare or a Forked Lightning or something like that.
Yeah. Cool.
And then,
just why we're picking Crucible of Aether Wave.
So there's 3 options for weapons for Kano. There's Crucible of Aether Weave, there's Aether Conduit, which I don't think is very playable at all.
And
it just doesn't do enough for the resource it costs, and I haven't really tested it, to be honest, but the games I have played, just every time I wish I had Crucible instead, so I put it down pretty quickly.
Yep, and then you've got the last option.
Talishar, the Lost Prince, which I have seen people taking for the Prism matchup, just so you can kill Genesis.
Yeah.
And while that might be something that seems really attractive, any matchup where you're taking a turn off to kill a Genesis and you're not using the +1 from Crucible regularly, I think is a losing position anyway.
Yep.
So the matchup's pretty hard anyway.
Yeah, Prism is going to be probably alongside Guardian are going to be the hardest matchups.
Prism's going to be by far the worst.
Yeah.
Like, not close to Guardian. You can win the Guardian one. But Prism, you should never win, barring them drawing nothing and you drawing the nuts.
Yeah.
And if they ever resolve an early Genesis, you lose on the spot, I think.
Yep.
Just making, like, the fact that it gives them Soul Surge every turn, replaces a card, it just does too much for you.
Okay.
So, for other equipment, we've got Iconite Skullcat, which I think I do want in the deck. It's very good at blocking, especially because it's turned on from the start of the game. It's one specific advantage Kano has. It's very good at blocking heroes like Katsu, when you need to turn off that mask draw. Like, you can block the second Kadachi twice with it.
Yeah.
And hitting breakpoints on things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the only matchup I bring it in for, though.
Yeah. The vast majority of games you're going to want to play Talismanic Lens because it just lets you play with so much more confidence.
Yep. And then Iron Rock Gauntlet, I think,
is
very debatable.
Katsu.
It's only for Katsu. Yeah, I'm not even sure I want to play it in Classic Constructed, but I'll leave it on the list till I find out how the matchup goes more.
Exactly right.
Losing the damage off Metacarpus nodes is quite high.
Yeah.
But giving you an extra turn to block that mask without giving up a card from hand is something I'm interested in doing as a baseline.
Yeah, I mean, when you're building deck lists, no matter what deck you're building, if there's a card that you think might be good in some matchup, leave it in.
Yep.
Why not? Try it out, see if it works. If it's not good or that matchup doesn't come up often enough, find another card that is good in the matchups that you're playing, right?
Yep.
Just experiment and work out what's best.
Yep. And just speaking back to more what we were saying about that, about Prism being a really hard matchup, I think it's totally fine to build a deck that has bad matchups.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be, every time you build a deck, you're not going to go out and say, man, this deck has great matchups across the board, it can't lose, why am I playing anything else? So you want the decks where you're going to lose to, where you're assuming you're losing to, to be less popular. Like, you wouldn't pick a deck in this meta that loses to Chain and Guardian. Like, those are the two pillars of the meta, and if you're doing that, you're probably asking for a bad time for yourself.
But you can always be surprised. Like, I think the classic example for me is we thought Guardian was completely dead. Road to Nationals because Dash had an obscenely good matchup against it and was also like the strongest deck in the format.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. Although it was a very hard matchup for Guardian, there were enough people playing other decks that Guardian was still a very viable and competitive option. So never count a deck out, even just because it has one bad matchup.
And so then the other option is Gambler's Gloves. which I was only running Blitz-A-Thon for KO,
Yeah.
which is obviously not a concern in Classic Constructed.
Mm-hmm.
You could think that you might want to leave it in for Reiner.
Yep.
Reiner being another one of your hard matchups. The Intimidate really messes up your hands, and the lower life really is really punishing versus a deck that can just put out that sort of damage
Yeah.
while disrupting you.
They can like combo you in the first few turns, like
Exactly,
100
right.
to dead if they're lucky.
But a lot of the time it doesn't involve rolling Scab Skins,
It's just the
or
card
if you
thing,
reroll
right?
Scab Skins, it does nothing, which is not a position you want to be in. You'd rather have an equipment that does something,
Metacarpus
which is
nodes.
where I want to be on
Yeah.
Metacarpus nodes. So you actually can threaten lethal bag.
Yeah. So if there are, for whatever reason, some like 2 sideboard cards, I think Gambler's Gloves and Iron Rot Gauntlet are the most cuttable of these equipment.
Yep. So Iron Rot's the next lowest equipment, but we're going to leave it in for now.
Yep.
And see how many cards we end up on.
All right.
So
Should
I
we have
think
a look at some of the like
blues?
the core cards?
Should we go
yeah,
blues?
the blues.
Should we start on blues because it's the easiest? Especially on a deck like Kano, where you know you want a lot of blues, right?
Yep.
You want to be playing probably around 30 blues in virtually every matchup.
Yeah.
Consider cutting down to about 27 when you
Yeah.
want more action.
Just quickly, most people know, but why blue so important for Kano?
Blues are very important for Kano because you want to be using his hero ability a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you want a lot of your impactful cards cost 2. And then alongside Crucible of Aetherweave, that costs 3.
Yep.
So you want to be using a blue from your hand every turn, ideally,
Mhm.
with a red. And as well, you might want to Kano and then play a card off that as well. So that's
Yep.
3 blues in hand. Anywhere from like 1 to 3 blues is great.
Yep.
Less than that's not good. 4 blues is still fine because you can Kano into it. So having about half your deck being blues is
Yep.
where I'd want to be.
The dream is blues on top, blues in hand, reds on top.
yeah. So just look at all the blues here. These are all the ones I had as options for the deck.
Yep.
And we'll decide which ones are best. So we're looking at probably 31 cards.
Yeah. So I can tell you which is the best blue in your deck.
Yep,
This is one.
it is that one.
It is also the most expensive card.
Yep, and it's
Yeah.
totally fine not to run it if you can't afford it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't block, which has come up before, has killed me. But the ability to opt off a Kano,
Is
so you get the
massive.
best of the top 2 cards,
Yeah.
or a random third,
Yeah.
is just
Hugely
irreplaceable,
powerful,
right? I've seen people recommend Whispers of the Oracle as a replacement for it, but they're not remotely close to the same card.
Yeah. I mean, one plays itself for free, right?
Yep,
And gets
so-
a free resource. So
If you're considering a replacement, you're saying this is the same card, but it costs 3, right?
yeah.
Because it's no longer a blow in your hand, you have to physically play it
Yeah, exactly
to get
right.
the effect.
This card plays itself when you pitch it.
Yep.
In Blitz, Overfideo is a much more powerful card because you just see it more often.
Yep.
Um,
And you can see
and
it
this-
twice more often.
yeah, exactly right. In Constructed, it's most likely one turn in your game will be slightly more consistent.
And it might
So-
not even be very good because some
Exactly.
hands just don't use Eye very well.
Exactly right. So yes, it's a very powerful card. If you have an eye, slam it in your wizard deck. But if you don't, there are better, more important cards that you should put your money towards first.
Yep, so we'll leave this here. That's what I'm going to play. And then the next best blue is Gaze the Ages.
All right.
It's an irreplaceable effect on a mythic. It sometimes does a good Eye of a Fidia impression.
Yeah.
If you came into it off the top, you opt to and you bounce it and you play the best one off the top
Yep.
again.
Exactly right.
And no other card does something like that. So if you have them, you should always run 3. Blocking 3, it's great.
The fact that it's blue and just sometimes gives you an effect for free is just extremely powerful.
Yep. So the next blue I want is 3 Energy Potion.
All right. So why do we want energy potion?
2 resources effectively equivalent to another card in your hand every turn you have it available.
Okay.
So being able to play another card, being able to activate Kano again, being able to pay for Metacarpus Nose twice.
Yep.
These are all things that you're really interested in doing.
Yep.
And often don't get there just off your base 4 card hands.
Yep.
So having those potions in play and the ability to put them in play for free off
For
Kano.
Kano, yeah.
Yep.
So you don't even have to give up your whole turn to play
Yep.
them sometimes. You can just hit them off the
And
top.
even then, like blocking out and just playing a potion for turn sets you
It's-
up for a
it's not
much
bad.
stronger late game.
Exactly. Yeah.
So these are Energy Potion in particular is one I'd never cut.
Yep.
It's something I'm always interested in doing. I swear, like in Blitz especially, I really feel like my win rate goes up by at least 10% every game I see an Energy Potion
Yep.
compared to where I don't.
Mm-hmm. It just
So-
allows you, like even in the end game, it just lets you get off those Metacarpus nodes for extra damage, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And you know, a lot of the time you may be like 1 or 2 off. This is that 1 or 2 that you would have been missing otherwise.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't think the amount of times I've said, I'm one resource off lethal here.
Yeah.
And if you get the energy potion, you're suddenly not.
While we're on potion, should we have a look at the time snaps?
Time snap potion, yeah. So time snap's a bit less strong. It requires you to play on your turn, and it requires you to have 2 things you want to do on your turn.
Yeah.
Which means you're probably not blocking. So, so it has to be good enough that you can set up the potion, and then you can play 2 cards that are strong enough to make you not block.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a card that looks to be in your slower matchups. So, and it has a very powerful interaction with another yellow card.
So Tome of Fendel is a big reason to run this card.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about yellows later, but in a slower meta, we are looking at abusing those Tome of Fendel turns. We need to go over the top of lots of null rune.
Reasonable to play 6 potions.
Yeah, and we need to play to your Stir Forked Blazing Over turns.
Yeah.
Playing more time snap potions is where you want to be, but because we're expecting a faster meta, you don't want to be setting up this less impactful potion that requires you to take damage on your turn.
Yeah.
So we're going to cut 2 of them down. We're going to play 1 here, and it still combos very nicely, but it's going to be more of a niche effect in this sort of deck, so we'll leave them out.
Yep. All right.
And then we've got another Blitz staple. Well, not really stable. It was played for a while. Was Blue Unmovable.
All right. So why was Unmovable popular in Blitz?
Unmovable was popular because of Ira. So you're playing versus a lot of Zephyr Needles,
Yep.
and you needed a way to kill it.
And this, will you say, well, why don't you play Red Sank or Red Fate?
Yeah. Because in other matchups, we don't want those. We want to be more aggressive and Kanoing. You can use it as blue.
Yeah, exactly. So it has a dual purpose.
Yeah, and it's also slightly better versus Dorinthia. You can Arsenal it and block 6 off the 1 card.
Yeah.
Which is the reason to want to play it in Classic Constructed, I think. If you're really concerned about your Guardians and your Dorinthias, you could probably leave it in. It's still a blue. It does dual purpose in your deck. It sometimes blocks.
The one massive downside to it is just a miss off the top.
Yep.
So if you Kano this, then you can brick your turn sometimes, and it can be disastrous. So there is quite a downside to playing this card.
So we want to keep our misses as low as possible.
Yeah.
Especially when we're aggressively blind Kanoing in this sort of list.
Yeah.
So we're going to cut these. I don't think they're worth playing in the current state of the game.
Yep.
And then we've got Whisper of the Oracle, which is another card people like a lot. I personally am not a fan.
I just don't think it does enough.
Yeah, it gives you an action point if you Kano into it, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But then you're using 3 resource and the card off the top to gain an action point, which leaves you with maximum 3 cards in hand and 1 in arsenal.
I mean,
so
at that point, you get the opt 2, but we're only playing 1 time snap potion as it is, and if you time snap potion off the top, then you get to use that action point whenever you want.
Yep. So ideally, you end up with 2 reds that you want to play at the same time.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a particularly realistic situation to be looking at, especially when you're considering that you're blind Kanoing into the Whisper, and using Whisper to set up the top card is a lot of the times just worse than blind Kanoing, because you need to keep the extra card to do it.
A lot of the time, you'd rather get some of these damage cards, right?
Yeah.
Like Reverberate, Aether Flare, or Snapback off the top can be much more impactful.
Even just pinging someone. Yeah.
Rather than just a lot of the time the action point isn't going to matter at all.
Yep. And I know a lot of people are fans of it in Kano, but I personally am not. So we'll go to the next one. Aether Rise. Bit of a controversial card. Some people...
This screams sideboard tech, right?
Yep. So what are the big instants to hit for? What commonly played decks are playing instants?
Oh, I can think of one really good instant that gets played in a lot of decks right now.
Sigil of Solace, right?
What? No. No, it's the Art of War, our channel name.
Oh, okay. Oh, this playmat. Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
That one. That one that could kill you on turn 3 or turn 4 if it goes through.
Yeah. So that's the big draw to playing Aether Rise, is countering an Art of War.
Yeah.
It normally lets the opposing deck go off, and normally their turn's planned around it.
Yes.
So
you're keeping cards to play the Art of War, right?
Yeah. So interacting with that Art of War in a way that no other deck can do, something that's quite an attractive prospect. You can also counter the Eclipse and the Doomsday. But Eclipse and the style of deck we wanted to play should never be relevant. If you get into an Eclipse turn, you probably lose the game.
100%, yeah. I mean, maybe your opponent somehow does it on turn 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it's not why you're playing the card, right?
Yeah.
It's to counter Art of War.
Yeah. And I think I overlooked this card a lot more. I've run this deck through a couple of games, and it really felt like I wanted Aethereyes just to slow down those chain turns.
Yeah.
Because the matchup felt decent if you can push out damage, but then Art of War is the one that lets them go bigger than you.
Yeah.
So having some interaction there is
Let's
worth
them go bigger
considering.
than everyone, right? Draw 3 cards and +1. It's ridiculous.
The other problem with running it though is making a blue or sideboard card really limits your slots because it's something that you don't want to leave in the whole time.
Yeah.
Not blocking makes it very bad with things like Katsu, Dorinthia.
Yeah.
So when you're cutting these blues, you utility blues.
It is. That card is purely a sideboard card. You're not playing it in the vast majority of matchups.
Yeah, I think it's not too bad too though if you want to, just for the fact that it's a blue.
Yep.
So you can always use it. And then we've got.
Are we playing them or not?
We're not playing them.
We're
No.
not playing them.
No, we're just going to start with not playing them. I might end up bringing them in when I see how they interact with instance, like what instance I need to interact with.
Okay.
Like, does Art of War matter that much in the end?
Yeah.
Or can I just ignore it
Okay.
and hope I beat it? So then we've got Cinnering Foresight. It's one of the only block 2s in the deck, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Which is the reason that I want to cut 1.
Okay.
Just because it's a blue, so
Yeah.
your blue slots are generally pretty free in Kano.
And this card is like, it's like Whisper of the Oracle, but a lot better.
So the +1 damage is very strong. Not eating an action point and being able to play it on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Not requiring an action point. Yeah, it combos very nicely with cards like Snapback.
Yep. And it combos well with any of the cards that double damage again. Like adding damage onto your arcane spells is really strong.
And being able to see it off the top with the Cindering
Yep.
is alright. So it does decent work for a blue, but it doesn't do damage, which makes it very awkward to Kano into on your turn especially.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I don't like running the full play set. Cool. And then we're on Zap. This is about as generic of a blue as you can get. It's a blue, it blocks 3, deals 1 arcane damage. That's sort of what we're looking for in the deck, so we're just going to run 3. And if we want to sideboard down below 31 blues, this is probably the card I'd look at cutting.
Yeah. It's not an incredible card, but it does the job.
Yep. And it's not a miss off Kano or Sonic Boom. So
Yeah.
So we'll look at Snapback next. It has some interesting interactions with cards like Gaze the Ages, Cinnering Foresight, Chain Lightning. You can respond to them and trigger the effects while also dealing damage. So the blue has marginal upside in that, but again, it's a block 3, it's blue, so we're running into the deck to get our blue count
and
higher.
it can sometimes get you there, right? Sometimes it's the card you need to trigger your Aether Flares on or whatever.
Yep. So then these are our snowbally damage cards over here. These 6, Reverberation, Aether Flare.
Yeah, so these cards can actually be quite relevant because this can be a blue that does 3 damage.
Yeah, if you Metacarpus and Crucible it, and then your next card will deal +3.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And Reverberate is a card that really punishes decks that are skimping on null run.
Yep. And it lets you go really wide on your turns by being able to play more.
Yeah.
As an
So
instance.
someone's playing 1 null run, then just Crucible, Reverberate can really punish them.
Yeah. And these are our vanilla damage cards. These 9 cards here.
Yep.
So this has Opt-X, where X is the damage, but on the blue it's not particularly the effect we're interested in. It's just the fact that it deals base 2 damage on a blue.
Yep.
So we're running these just to push a little bit more damage if they get hit.
Yeah, the issue with if you don't run a lot of these cards is you start missing on Kano, and then also even though you've got reds in the deck, if you aren't running a bunch of these cards, sometimes you can run out of damage to get there.
Exactly
if some of your hands are awkward.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're looking at for blues currently.
Cut that.
Yeah. And so we'll move on to yellows next, which is where most of the exciting cards are in Kano.
Yeah, so this is yellow always kind of lands into the tech category. They're not overly efficient one way or overly pitch resource the other way.
Yep.
So they tend to be used for cards that have very unique effects.
Yep. We'll just get those
A
out.
lot of Majestics line up in yellows.
Yeah. So for yellow, we've got 2 generics and 3 wizard 3 wizard cards.
Yeah.
So we've got Remembrance here. These are in Kano for when you want to be playing versus a lot of null rune, and you want to be putting back your high damage stuff, like your
Yeah,
Stir
this
Fort.
is for Stir Fort, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's for when you need to get over that Guardian, like continual block.
Yep.
So we could go up to 2. It's not something I'm as interested in, but I think if you run none, you're in a lot of trouble versus Guardian. You just a lot of the time can't get there on enough damage.
Yeah, they're just going to be able to block you out very safely.
Yep. So we're running 1 as a concession to that sort of matchup.
Yep.
But if you're more worried about Bravo or Dash Control,
Yep.
I'd go up to 2 Remembrance.
And if you are playing Guardian, like some amount of the time, and even with the Remembrance, you can't beat them.
Yep.
So say you have like a less than like 30% win rate, then I think it's fine to just cut the Remembrance and
Just call it a day.
Yeah, call it a day. That matchup's a loss, and try and bolster something else.
Yep. So then we've got Sonic Boom, which I think you should never be running less than 3 of.
Yeah, it's one of the best wizard cards, right?
It has a unique effect that lets you snowball cards off the top
Yeah.
and really push some big damage turns.
Yeah, it's a card with its own mass trigger built in.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Chain Lightning is another interesting one. I'm running 3. I really like the card. Finding it off Lesson to deal damage with another card from your hand. Kanoing it off the top is normally really good.
Yep.
So it's a card I don't want to cut. I've seen people cutting some, but I think it combos with too much of your deck to make it a justifiable cut.
Yeah.
Especially when we're looking at going wide with multiple spells, such as Snapback or Aether
just
Flare.
being aggressive. And I mean, some of the interactions it has with being able to like react other cards to it in order to get like additional effects with your Gaze the Abyss,
Gaze the Ages.
Gaze the Ages, and,
Yep.
and Snapback and stuff is really powerful.
Yep.
And also it can give cards plus power, right?
No, that one's just
Sure.
deals 3 damage.
Or just deals 3 damage.
Yep.
You won't.
Yep.
It's still good.
But it plays them as an instant, so
Yep.
the ability to do that's like not a
Quite-
commonly found one.
Yep.
Yep. And then we've got 3 Tomb of Fendel as another generic card.
Okay, so you can actually get these off the top of the deck to just
Draw
more,
2.
right?
Yep.
Yep.
And then even in Kano, playing them out of hand's not bad because you play so well off lots of resource that
Yeah. Just having lots of
Having more
resource and
resource is a
action
good
points
thing.
Is not
yeah.
not
So
always a problem,
Kano's
right?
damage scale is much harder off cards in hand than most decks.
Yeah.
So like you'll find if you go up to 6 cards in Guardian, your damage doesn't actually change from your 4 cards, right?
Yeah, because you're very capped by your action points,
Yep.
right?
Whereas Kano can continually use those with his ability. You can continually pull cards off the top to make bigger and bigger turns. And so I think drawing up, especially gaining life to make up for that starting life deficit,
Yeah.
is a really powerful effect.
Drawing cards is just like
Yep.
obscenely powerful, right?
Yep.
In a build that can use this many cards, and yeah, the life gate is just gravy.
Yep. Yep. And I don't think I cut any, personally.
Yeah.
I might sideboard some out into matchups where the block 2 really hurts,
Yeah.
but I'm not even sure I'll do that. I
Alright.
think I'll probably just stay at 3. And then Lessons our other yellow here. It's a card that tutors, so pulls a card out of your deck and puts it on top.
Yep.
And then that means you can play it instantly off Kano.
Yeah.
So it's like not an effect you can replace.
Yep.
Being able to find Blazing Aether when you need it is
so-
the most common use for it.
So one of the ideas for Lesson on Lava, right, is that you can set up an OTK where you go lesson into lesson into lesson into blazing.
Yeah. Which is a ridiculous amount of resource. But
Yeah, it is. Or you go into like do some variation
Yeah.
of that, right?
A
Maybe
big
you can
one
only
is
play
like-
2 lessons or
big one is Lesson, Chain Lightning, card from hand.
yeah.
So these are the sort of combos you need to be looking for with Lesson and Lava. I think how you use your Lesson and Lava is one of the biggest signs of how you play as a wizard player.
Yeah.
The card is the most versatile and can often be worth the most damage
Yeah.
out of your hands. So I'm always on 3. I'll never look at cutting 1. It's probably the last thing I cut in the whole deck.
Yeah. You swap heroes before you think about moving.
Yeah, exactly. So then we'll go to Reds, which I have quite a few of.
And I
But
think in the future, if there are other wizard heroes, Lesson in Lava is probably one of the reasons to play Kano.
yeah,
other than
being
just hero
specialization.
ability. Yeah.
Yeah. Fully agree.
I think Blazing Aether is a good card, but it's a lot more situational.
Yeah. They combos very well with Lesson.
Yeah,
The
they do
big
work
idea.
well together.
That's quite cool.
Should we move some of these up a bit?
Yeah.
So Reds get a bit more interesting again.
Especially because you only
some
have
sideboard cards.
about 30 slots for them after your equipment, your blues, and your reds. Oh, sorry, your yellows.
So there's a bit of fighting slots here.
Yeah. And this is where the different game plans, depending on your meta, really comes in.
Yeah.
So do you want to go really tall? Do you want to be playing these sort of cards? This like whole column here.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to be doing? Do you want to like really stack over the top of Null Room?
Yeah.
And we've decided that we don't want to. That's not where the meta's at.
We want to play some more aggressive cards.
Yep.
But I've got to say, Scottish Rain, isn't this like your favourite card? What happened? What is your love?
I know, and I would... Yeah, so I'm not playing any currently. I don't think I will be playing any. It doesn't do quite enough for the gameplay we want to.
Yep.
Especially because red slots are really tight. I would love to have one in there as a lesson target, so you can lessen Scalding Rain on the turn.
Yep.
But I feel like there's more impactful things you can be doing, and if you're reduced to that situation, playing any 3 is like 1 less damage and probably not worth the slot.
Cool.
So get Scalding Rain out of here. Get it out of here.
It's a tough cut, but it has to be done.
Yep, so we'll look at other core cards and move into sideboarding ones later. New one from Monarch, yeah.
So this card works better the fewer of them you have, which is a bit different because obviously as soon as you've played one, if you don't hit your remembrance, then the other ones aren't basically cards you want to play.
Yeah.
Because you're not playing Brutal Assaults, are you?
Not really, no. That's not why you're playing Kano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you want to get the extra intellect, and it's usually a bit easier to get these effects because a lot of decks aren't playing that much armor, or they're sideboarding out one of their most armory piece.
Ironically, it's one of the only cards in the deck that gets worse the less Noah and your opponents are playing.
Yeah.
Because it means they're playing actual armor.
Yeah.
So it can get blocked out by people's armor, which feels really bad when you're like, oh, I'm building my whole deck, take advantage of your armor situation, and this card incidentally gets hit by that.
So you would you would probably never play this into like Dorinthia or something, because Dorinthia is just going to have the spare armor to just block you anyway.
Yeah, and then in that case it eats 1 card, and then the armor which wasn't going to do anything the whole game anyway.
And you'd rather just push damage, right?
Exactly. So it could be Voltic Bolt, which eats 1 card and deals 5 over the top.
So at the moment we've picked 1 to stay in the deck.
Yeah.
Why 1?
Because
what matchups are it for?
So a lot of decks are sideboarding out of like 3 armor blocks, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So Chain, once they break the Iron Weave, can't block out your Nourishing Emptiness. Katsu often will have to use Mask if they want to block it. Guardian can't block it if they're boarding in that much Null Rune.
Yep.
So there is...
Ranger, right?
Yeah.
If Ranger can't do anything about it, so...
yeah, because it's all Blade Break, so you're eating all the equipment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's enough upside to running it that having 1 in the deck's good enough.
Yep.
But we're not running more than 1. You can remembrance them back and get cute with having 2.
Yeah.
But with the card being like not the most powerful.
I think it's a bit cheeky, and you want a Kano deck to be very focused. So,
and especially with having enough downside that like it's not always the best
I
card.
definitely think there are like better sideboard cards that we've cut than a second Nourishing.
Yeah, so we'll leave that there. We've got Zap. It's a 0 cost, deals 3, which is okay, but it's not a snowball effect. It's vanilla damage, and it's assuming you're blocking out a lot, I think, to play it. So you're blocking out 3 cards and then playing Zap as your turn.
This is what I just want you to clarify, because from what we've said, we want to be aggressive, we want to deal damage. Why not Zap? It costs no resource, it just deals flat 3 damage, and you can get it off the top.
So
why is this not the perfect card?
Right.
Explain.
So by being aggressive, I want to be keeping multiple card hands. I want to be using snowballing effects, such as Lesson in Lava or Sonic Boom, into another impactful card, and then maybe a third thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Zap, the sort of playstyle it incentivizes...
Is slower. Ironically slower, because you have less cards.
Yeah, because it uses an action point still. So being able to play it on your turn to just deal 3 is not where we want to be. It's fine off the top because it's free, but there's also cards which cost 1, like Snapback, which deal the same amount of damage but have added utility.
Yeah.
And this is where the red slots becoming quite tight matters. So like this is something I'd happily play probably.
Yeah.
As like 1 or 2 of as a lesson target mainly.
But just as the slots get tighter.
But as the slots get tighter, I don't think you can play it.
I think like Zap is a good example of a card that you would actually the effect seems quite obvious, but when you actually play with the cards and actually see how you're playing with the Zap, then suddenly its function and usefulness becomes a lot more murky, right? So when you're playing, don't just think, this card seems good, just chuck it in. Actually, like, really think about when you draw the card, you have it in your hand, how does it make playing that hand feel?
Yeah.
Does it want you to make you slow the game down? Does it want to make you speed the game up? Do you want to keep 4 cards?
Yeah.
You know, these are important questions that you need to ask yourself when you're building a deck or evaluating cards.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the main lessons that we have in this video that you can apply to any deck.
Yeah.
Is just evaluating every different piece of your deck and working out where
Like,
they
does
sit together.
a specific card fit the role you want your deck to do? Like,
Yeah.
it might be a generically good card in the hero pool,
Yeah,
but it might be pushing your deck in a direction you don't want to.
exactly right.
Whereas we've got a specific idea of where we want to go, and
Yep.
Zap does not meet the criteria,
Yep.
so it's probably not in there.
Yeah, and other decks do this well, right? But I think Kano is an excellent example because every Kano list wants to be very focused.
Yeah. And so then we've got Centering Foresight Red. I think it's very good for playing on your opponent's turn,
yeah,
and pushing damage over the top of Null Rune,
Mm-hmm.
and taking advantage of when those blue heavy decks tap out. So
Yeah.
run out of resource versus you to push that damage, which is exactly not what we're wanting to do,
exactly.
right?
Like, yeah. So when we were playing Blitz, you're always playing in my turn.
Yep.
We were playing Constructed. Now you're not. What's happened?
I was never playing on your turn in Blitz anyway. There was like, my style was take
Well,
cards out of your opponent's
in
hand.
a lot of matchups, you do though.
Yeah, yeah. So in Constructed, playing on your opponent's turn is generally just more resource heavy than playing on your turn, especially when your opponent has no Null Rune, right?
Yeah.
Like you're doing the same damage,
Yeah.
but you're spending 3 resource to Kano off the top instead of just spending whatever the card costs out of your hand,
Yep.
and then Kanoing as well.
Yeah.
So you want to be incentivizing your deck to play on your turn. You want to snowball, go out wide, and you don't want to feel like you're forced to play on your opponent's turn, which Cindering kind of does. It's kind of a trap sometimes.
Definitely does. Yeah. I mean, I guess just to make clear, like, the reason you do want to play on your opponent's turn sometimes is to get around the Null Rune,
Yeah.
right? Because they're tapping out.
When
they
you
don't the
really have
resource.
to push that damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But opponents have lots of life in Constructed. They're just going to take the damage. They're going to hit you back harder because you're sinking an extra 3 blue resource. You're not using your actions
Yeah.
efficiently because your turn is going to be weaker once you've blocked and
Yeah.
played stuff. So just the life just bogs you down, makes it not very efficient.
So I'm going to cut this from this sort of list.
Yep.
And then we're on to the cards I think I actually will be playing. So we're on 2 Aether Spindle, not 3.
Why? This card seems great in this kind of
I do love the card. It is kind of exactly what we want to be doing, but this is a concession to not enough slots in the deck.
Okay.
And it's also one of the less go wide cards in the deck, right?
Alright.
It stacks damage up high. It goes big on one spell,
So
and then Kanos again
I mean,
for
it's
another
just-
single spell.
it's just going to be a bit hard on you. Can you explain the reason why you'd want to play Red Voltic Bolt over an Aether Spindle? Why are you prioritizing 1 damage over the opting ability?
So I'm prioritizing 1 damage here, and this is like probably a reasonable consideration to make. I like Voltic Bolt more here because they cost the same resource.
Yep.
I like the option to play off 2 cards if you do have to block more from Voltic Bolt. So Aether Spindle doesn't do anything different to Voltic Bolt off 2 cards except 1 less damage. And Voltic Bolt also snowballs better with what the game plan we want to be doing.
Yep.
So like if you reverberate into Voltic Bolt, it's a bit better than Aether Spindle
Yep.
because you're not likely to have the resource to Kano and play the cards you opt into.
Yep.
Also,
your opponents have a lot of life, and you've
Yep.
got to get this somehow, right?
also maximizing blazing Aether damage is a big part of this deck.
Yep.
So that 1 turning into 2 more damage
Yep.
can matter.
Yep.
And that's why we're cutting 1 of these rather than 1 of these.
Cool.
But don't get me wrong, I would really like to play 3 of them if I
Yeah.
had room.
Cool. Yeah, I just thought that was important because they're very similar cards.
Mhm.
So
And Opt is a very powerful effect in Kano, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So then we're on 3 Stew the Aether Winds.
This is a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
These end up in most Wizard decks.
They push damage super hard. They very often give you the Storm Strider's kill on your opponent's turn. We do it through Forked Lightning, or even like a Chain Lightning into something else out of hand.
Yep.
Or Lessen Blazing Aether, making it 12.
Yep.
Like that's the sort of kill you're looking for. And so being able to pump that initial spell and let you use that Storm Strider's instant effectively, playing 2 cards off the Storm Strider's instant is something that you can't find many other places.
Yeah, sometimes they can be quite awkward. Like
Yeah,
if you
it
reveal
definitely
them
can
off the
be.
top and it's not what you want at the moment, you want
a damage
like
spell.
A damage spell.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to call them attacks, but they're
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, so, but Stir the Aether Winds actually enables you to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's what you're playing towards.
Yeah. And so then we've got Sturdy Other One's best friend, Fort Lightning.
Alright.
Doubling Fort Lightning damage is insane, frankly. But where this card shines is going over Lost and Null
Yeah.
which is not the idea of the deck.
Yeah.
So we're cutting 1 here, because the combo's powerful enough that I still want to play them. Fort Lightning still comes well enough with Crucible and Metacarpus Nose to push damage
Yeah.
that I want to have some in the deck, and I want to have the option to draw to Stir Forked in my slower matchups.
Yeah.
Especially when you're playing Remembrance, just to put this combo back,
Yeah.
because that's where you need the damage versus
Yeah.
like Bravo.
Yes. The thing with Fork Lightning, though, is that when people are not running Null Rune, there are better ways to just deal damage.
Yeah.
More efficient, resource-wise,
Mainly because it costs 3.
Yep, and just go well with more cards and just Stir.
I mean, if you could compare these 2 cards off the top,
Yeah.
at base cost, this is 1 more damage,
Yeah.
plus a Crucible, this is 1 less resource and the same damage,
Yeah.
and then it's only when you start getting more and more resource pumped into it that Fort Lightning actually gets better.
Yeah.
So we're cutting 1.
And it's the same with Stir. It can sometimes be really awkward.
Yeah.
Just because it's a red that costs 3.
Yeah. And if you're expecting more Null Rune, I would definitely go up on Fort
Yeah, then
Lightning.
you double down on this plane, right?
Yeah. But that's the other plan of the deck.
Yeah.
That's sort of the sideboard plan for Bravo, for Dash Control, which we're hoping not to see a lot of.
Yeah.
And that's why we're down on
Are
it.
you playing these in every matchup or not?
No, I'm cutting these in the faster matchups.
Okay.
It's too resource intensive. I'm keeping the Stirs in.
Yeah.
I really
Alright.
like playing the card. I think it pushes enough damage that you keep it in.
But the Fork Lightning isn't there most of the time.
Too resource intensive for those aggro decks. Yeah.
Cool.
So then we've got Blazing Aether, which is where all the damage comes from in the deck.
Yeah. So this doubles or triples your damage from other
Yeah.
sources, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
It doubles your damage. It deals the amount of damage you've dealt this turn already.
yeah.
So if you're Blazing Aether after Stir Fort, it's 10 damage, right?
Yeah.
Then this deals 10 for 0. And it's
Yeah.
like, the amount of damage it puts out is incomparable to
Yeah.
any other card in the game.
Yeah.
Especially when you start getting to Blazing Aether turns. Because
Yeah.
then you're dealing 10, then 20 on the second
Yeah.
one.
And you can also combo it with Everflare as well. It
Yep.
still adds the extra damage from Everflare, which I think is the other plane for the deck, right?
Yep.
This is just the card that pushes the most damage
Yep.
consistently.
So
other
these-
than, your Leesons and
So let's spread out a bit. So these are the cards that really push damage, that really let you play
Just
to that
go huge,
advantage,
right?
go huge, and really let you play that go wide style of wizard we want to punish decks that can't block you.
Yeah.
So Aether Flare, increasing the damage in your next spell.
Yeah.
For example, Stir, Crucible, Aether Flare, pay for Metacarpus, that deals 8 damage.
Yeah.
If you play Blazing Aether after that, it deals 16. So
Yeah.
you're dealing 24 damage on that turn.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of damage that other decks can't put out.
Yeah. I mean, the on hits on some of these cards are so strong that, and if your opponent's running very low amounts of Norin, it feels like playing Ninja, but they can't block you.
Exactly.
It doesn't feel
yeah.
very fair.
Yeah.
So these are the cards that can really punish people for
Yeah.
skimping on Norin.
And Reverberate, then you play another card.
Yeah.
Then you go into other things like playing Reverberate, something, Blazing Aether.
Yeah, and frankly, to be honest, these 6 cards are the reason to play Kano at all right now.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. The snowballing effects of them, the ability to push damage,
Yeah,
give you the ability to race any hero.
yeah,
Yeah.
But in Blitz, we weren't really playing these cards very much, were we?
Yep, that's because Null Rune really messes
Yeah.
with them. As soon as people start playing for Null Rune,
Those
this card
cards become
does
terrible.
nothing.
Yeah,
This card is slightly better, because at least it always draws a 2-card block. But if this is getting blocked by 1 card, it deals 1, and your next one deals 1 more.
And
But
it's,
it uses
like,
your
not
action point
that
as well,
impactful,
and it
right?
doesn't do anything. So that's why we're moving to this plan,
yeah,
mainly based around the lack of Null Rune.
yeah,
And then we've got the last couple cards, Tome of Aetherwind. Drawing cards is powerful, right?
yeah.
Like most
we know
decks,
this.
most
And
decks want to draw cards.
The other mode can be really useful when you do have that Fork Lightning where you're looking to go with
Yeah.
the Blazing Aether.
Yep. So you can really step up. Like you can buff the damage on Aether Flare, things like this.
Yeah,
But most of the time it's going to be a draw 2.
Yep.
Playing it off Reverberate to draw 2 feels great.
yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's a card I'd ever want to cut. It does block
It's
2,
one
which
of
is
the
kind of
cards
awkward.
that's just like, this is a fantastic Kano card. Play it in all of your Kano
And it's very
builds.
versatile, right? So then we've got Snapback. This is just going to allow us to increase our ability to go wide.
Yep.
So having a card that doesn't use an action point or doesn't require like Kano to like stack up damage on a turn, is like reasonably powerful.
Yep.
I talked a little bit about the combos with it on the blue one. So like there's various things that interacts with well in your deck.
Yeah, Gaze the Ages and
Chain Lightning, yeah.
Chain Fork.
Aether Flare is a great combo for it.
Yeah, true.
Just because you can Aether Flare and then follow it up with the snapback.
Off just one action point.
Exactly.
And it means you don't have to go fishing off the top.
Yes, yeah. And so then we've got Voltic Bolt, which is the slightly odd card out. It's the go-to card that we're playing.
Yeah, this strikes me as the zap that we are playing.
yeah. So it kind of is. It's mainly a concession to the fact that sometimes you do have to block cards.
Yeah.
And this is a good card to end up with in hand or in arsenal that you can play on your turn and just push damage anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a significant number of times where you're going to have a 2-card hand and this is fine to play, or you're just going to need a card to block and that's also fine. So the cost of playing it is not as high as some of the other reds, so it just makes it...
It's like double the damage of Zap, right? But they end up being played in the same situation.
Yeah.
And this is just a stronger
has
version.
the added benefit of being better against those high Norin decks if you do come up against them.
And then we've got a couple of sideboard options. So we've got Chains of Eminence and Fate for Scene.
Alright. Let's go with the obvious one first, Fate for Scene.
Fate for Scene. Sometimes you just want a defense reaction to block those awkward forwards out of Ninja, to shut down that Dorinthia Dawnblade. And Opting's a more powerful effect than Sync in this deck. So that's why we're playing this one over Sync. But it's like it's okay to Arsenal. It comes out a lot of the time if you don't need to block.
Yeah, and I think you really do want this kind of effects in a lot of decks. Ninja is such a popular deck in everywhere around the world. Ninja is a popular deck, and if you don't have anything, that
so is
can block,
Dorinthia.
Dorinthia too. Just those really powerful aggro decks. And those decks are really good at forcing breakpoints. Your 4s, your 7s, and if you don't have anything that can ever turn those breakpoints down a notch so that you can block them on the same level that they're attacking you, the game gets very difficult. Because if you're 2-blocking every single leg tap that comes your way...
Especially with your poor armor.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're 2-blocking their leg tap, they're getting 2 Darchies in every turn and then something else, right? And it's going to be really hard for you to compete with that damage if you never have a Fate for Scene.
Yep, so that's why I think at least one defense reaction is good. I probably wouldn't run more because it is a miss off Kano again. Like it does sometimes break the top of your deck when you really need it to not. So
I think this is a much more fair card than a blue unmovable.
Exactly. That's sort of what I'm looking for, is that sort of effect. But this one being able to Arsenal will still let you keep 4 cards. Is a bit different to blue unmovable, right?
Well, it helps you in the Ninja matchup a lot more than blue unmovable does.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And then we've got Chains of Eminence. And this is sort of a nod to Chain being a good deck in the meta.
So why play it over Snag?
Okay, so the difference between Snag and Chains of Eminence, and this is something I've thought quite a lot about, is like, why would you play either card? And so Chains of Eminence is there for when you want to slow down Chain. Like, you know he's getting to late game, and his late game is probably stronger than you. But
it is. I assure you.
But you want to slow the game down to a point where you can race him. So you want to name Seeds of Agony or Riftbind.
Just to try and break them.
To break their hands, to make them take damage off Blood Debt, to make them unable to block your sort of things. So being able to not pitch the Arcane Barrier off a named card off Chains is quite powerful. And the other matchup it's actually really, really good in is Dorinthia.
Because you name the Warriors Valor.
You name Warriors Valor, which is the scariest card for you to ever see because it pushes damage and it gives them that second attack.
And it means they're actually threatening a lot of their run hits, right?
And a lot of the time it's a 9 of.
So, I guess, like, the counterpoint to it is the Snag.
Sorry,
With a... it's all great. The Snag is a blue, right? So you might think initially that it fits in the Wizard deck more, just because it's higher resource. But Snag works best when it's blocking, like, more than 4 or 5 damage. And for your opponent to do that with their Riftbinds, they need to be playing multiple Riftbinds, and they need to have set up all their seeds and stuff for it.
They need to set up the bottom of their deck, or they need to leave cards in Blood Debt.
Or be extremely lucky, at which point you're also extremely lucky to have the Snag. So the idea is that if the game goes that late to where your Snag is extremely relevant, then you've probably lost the game long before that anyway. So this is a sideboard card that we can play aggressively on turns 2, turns 3, turns 4, and still be aggressive. As well as not break the top.
As well as also being relevant in some other matchups where Snag isn't.
Exactly, right.
So I'm actually leaving Chains of Eminence out for the moment.
Yep.
I just don't think the chain matchup is that bad, funnily enough, because I think your damage output is way more than enough to kill them before like turn 5, before their blood deck gets real scary.
If they ignore you, right?
If they ignore you.
Yeah,
of course, this is
stuff.
always a concession to like people not playing enough Null-Rune.
Yeah.
This sort of idea.
As soon as people jump up to 3 and 4 Null-Rune, like say, I guess a lot of newer players, when they start playing, they don't have all their sideboard slots figured out, and it's very easy for them to just go, oh, well, I'll put 4 Null-Rune in my deck.
Yeah.
So if you're playing in a newer meta and everyone is playing 4 Null-Rune, then frankly, this is not the deck you want to play.
Yeah.
But if you're playing in a more built-up meta that's played against itself for a few months, and people are going, well, these Null-Rune don't help me out in the vast majority of my games.
This is like 3 sideboard slots for one matchup that's ever going to come up.
Yeah.
Why am I playing them?
Exactly,
and that's
right.
totally a consideration people should make when they're playing these Null-Rune. It's like, how much do you think you're going to run into Kano? And the answer is virtually never, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of times you see, like, the one game on stream where the Dorinthia plays 1 Null-Rune against the Wizard, and you go, ha ha, they were cheeky.
Yeah.
Well, that was their one game in 50,
Yeah.
you know? Like, we're never punished for it in those other 49 games, you know?
Yeah.
So there is a real cost to playing those Null-Rune.
Yeah.
And if your meta isn't playing them, then this deck can sneak in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to play a different Kano deck.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's where I'm looking at for building Kano at the moment. And I hope we gave you some insights about things you should be thinking about when you're putting together any deck.
Yeah, so although this video is very Kano focused, the same thought process applies to every single deck you'll ever build.
Yeah.
Get all the cards out, lay them out. If you don't have the cards physically, pull them up on the website, browse through all the card galleries, evaluate each card, write down what your deck does.
Yeah.
You know, are you trying to be aggressive? Are you trying to play slow?
Write down your game plan
Yeah.
and who you think you need to sideboard for.
Yeah, write down aggressive Dorinthia deck, playing versus Bravo, playing versus Rhinar, playing versus, and then work out what your deck is doing the vast majority of the time, and then select your cards based on that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've showed you, and it's good to just have another person to bounce your ideas off as well.
Yeah, and playtest, absolutely. Like, we could end up playing this deck and it might be terrible. We might find, like, this Baltic Bolt isn't very good at all.
But maybe the Zap is better.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
That's the sort of thing that might come up in playtesting.
Yeah.
And you might also just find, like, your deck's not very cohesive,
Yeah.
and you need to rethink what your plan is,
Exactly
and do you
right.
have enough cards going towards that plan?
Yeah, and that's all part of the process. And if that happens, the deck's not working, just pick a different starting point, use the same process, and restart.
And also reconsider your sideboarding.
Yeah.
Are you diluting your plan too much?
Yeah.
Are you taking out, like, your reverberates and your Aether Flares versus 4 Null-Rune, and suddenly you have no damage? And that's a very real concern for this build of the deck
Yeah.
versus high Null-Rune. It's like, we might actually just run out of damage versus Bravo.
Yeah.
So, this like, the sort of matchup that I'm not playing the deck to beat.
Yep.
And that's something that you should be thinking about. It's like, do you pick this deck and you're like, okay, Prism's a concession. Like, they can beat me every time. I don't care, but I'll beat that chain every time.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a perfectly okay concession to make when you look at what people are actually playing.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, this deck is going to be very meta dependent. But if you use the same process for another deck, it might not be as meta dependent. You might find it fits your build really well.
Yep.
So, as always, don't just blindly follow what we do. This deck is very well probably not the best build of Kano, and we've said in the video multiple changes that we might make depending on how things actually evolve in our meta.
Yeah.
So do the thinking for yourself, work out what's good, and make the changes.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'd like to add, there are a couple games you can actually watch on the last Armory event from Dice Jar Games.
Yeah, if you want to see this deck in action.
Because we had to re-record this video. So we'd made this video before the Armory, and then I ran it through the Armory, and then audio didn't work.
Yeah.
So
we got all the cards unsleeved, and we're sleeving them. It was all exciting.
yeah, but
here we are.
But now you can actually just watch some games straight away if you want to. If you want to see how the deck performs,
Yeah.
go watch the Armory stream from last week.
Cool. Thanks for watching. This has been a long one, so if you stuck around, massive props to you. Make sure you're subscribed, make Greg happy, and thanks for watching.
And thanks for talking about a hero you don't know much about, Daniel.
All right.
Awesome. Cheers.